Alive, and this is RandomNet, where we explore the randomness of internet. I'm excited to, to start another live stream. Uh, Last time I did that, which was back on Tuesday. I believe the platform we dived into was Goodreads, and it has huge collection of reviews for different books, and also quotes and whatnot. So it was a good session overall. And today we're gonna let this wheel of names decide which platform we're gonna talk about. So I'm just gonna click here to spin and hope that it lands on something interesting. YouTube. Nice. Yeah, I haven't done one of these YouTube reactions in a while. What do I want to? Let's check this out.
Should men take dating advice?
Yeah,
When the stakes are high.
Should men take dating advice from women?
Absolutely no. You don't ask a fish how to catch a fish. You ask a fisherman how to catch a fish.
Wait, what happened? Oh,
You mean about Black Life Matters? If Black Life Matters, why black man still out here, still rolling his hammer? Had a sword at the same time, had a dagger, had a
let's do something else. Hmm. There are so many different videos, and I don't feel like reacting to any of them. I would rather just maybe I can just play some of the the news or something and react to that. Maybe that could be a thing. Let's see. Who do I want to listen to and react? There were few podcasts I was listening to other day, and of course something to do with politics because that's one of my core interests. And plenty of times I was like, yeah, this is such a dumb point, um, uh, and I wish I was there to rebuttal to that point. But who knows? I probably wouldn't have like thought about that in the moment. Who knows? But the point being, that would be a good plan. Maybe to kind of play some of those podcasts and react to some of the conversations within that. Let's do this. I know there are quite a few actors with whom I disagree with, and this seems like the exact topic I'll be interested in. So let's check this out. And
So the fun thing with the serpent is how does this.
yeah, I feel like Jordan Peterson is an influencer figure for sure, but um, plenty of times he has his confirmation and he comes to that. He just creates reasoning to conclude whatever his bias is around that. And I've seen that happen with like plenty of people, regardless of which political spectrum, which side of the political spectrum they fall on. But I feel like Jordan Peterson is one of them who kind of like to point others of their biases without even checking his own. So that kind of makes me laugh at it. But he's super smart guy. Uh, some of his insights are very useful. But honestly, I have listened to so many figures which have like a better message than what he tries to preach, I guess. But yeah, but that's the beauty of internet and people, right? Like we find uh, meaning through different forms. Maybe I am biased towards Jordan Peterson because he looks at the world from his Christianity lens. I mean, not even as a as an individual who were born into a particular religion or region, but more on the line of like, hey, this is the influence which Christianity had, which is not totally true, but but that's what I'm getting at. Like, if you, I don't think he is well read in other religions. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I never even bothered to kind of check that out. But just listening to his conversations, I feel that he's um, so much kind of like bought into Christianity that he sees everything from that particular lens. And sure, I mean, he's an individual. He can do whatever and think however he wants to. But let's take a listen to his incredible journey to God.
I don't like that question.
I don't like that question.
I don't like that question.
I don't like the question.
People have asked me whether or not I believe in God, and I've answered in various ways. No, but I'm afraid he probably exists. That's
Well, that's kind of dumb. He said like no, but he probably exists. So first of all, um, if if it's high probable, then why would you say that you don't believe in it? And how would you even say that it's a he? Oh, based on what? I mean, sure. Let's just say if you're going with, I don't know, like a figure of speech, like, hey, he was referred to, he, like, I don't know. It's if someone have to like label God as something which is like beyond genders, then call it an it, because that's probably what it gonna be, a thing of a figment of imagination to begin with. But sure, but at the same time, it's not a he or she, because especially when you're saying it's probably there, it's probably true, then and you still say that you don't believe in God, which is oxymoronic. I think that's the right term.
the traditions bind the community together. Now I'm saying that, and I don't go to church, and the reason I don't go to church is because, well, it drives me crazy, to speak frankly. I haven't been able to sit in a situation like that ever since I was, well, ever, really. That's really the truth of it, ever. I'm not convinced that that's a good thing, because I do believe, and I've had good conversations about this with Jonathan Pajot, I do believe that communal return to the source of the community's ethics is actually a necessary thing. And maybe I'm atoning for my past sins by doing these biblical lectures at the moment, which is something that's communal. And then because there's also something about going where a bunch of other people are to reaffirm your commitment to the good that you're all aiming at, that's got some power in it. And
Well, the problem with this entire statement is that religion is not that. I mean, with this statement, Jordan Peterson is trying to say that religion is the good for the community and the society, but that's not true. Religion, if we all know, has been the cause of so many wars and so much misery in the world to this date. And ironically, he himself admitted that he doesn't go to church. Well, I mean, if he thinks that the community has to come together to, especially when it comes down to finding like ethics, and he believes that religion is a gateway to that, then why doesn't he go to church? I mean, these this is like he is conflicting himself, and let's take a listen to the entire video. Or I might be interrupting every few minutes just because I don't want YouTube to claim this as a copyright or something. So probably I have to do this, or maybe like talk over his speech. But regardless, let's check it out.
I don't think that that's something that we should forego. I think it's dangerous. I mean, look, even if you're cynical about church, and I guess I would put myself in that category, it's certainly the case that communal church going in the 1950s, say, provided the average person with at least an hour a week where they were contemplating, no matter how poorly, the purpose of ethics in life and the idea of a higher purpose and a higher meaning in life. And you got to think that spending an hour a week thinking about that is better than never doing it at all. I don't know how that tradition can be revivified in a meaningful way, but I really do think it's a catastrophe that we've lost it, because we don't have a center, an ethical center that holds our community together, and the consequence of that is that we're fragmenting quite badly.
Okay, here's a wild suggestion. If you really think that the people have to come together and sit together in order to understand the ethics of the society, well, then they can just participate in a meditation session. I mean, why not just do that? Like, just why aren't there like meditation centers instead of like all these bullshit churches and temples and whatnot? I mean, technically, these spaces are supposed to do just that. I mean, I bet like people who goes to any religious place, they go there to pray, and praying is just a form of meditation. Maybe selfishly, people are just praying to get something in return, and meditation is superior in that context, because when you sit down with meditation, you try or you try not to expect anything out of it. The only thing you could do is like work during that session, because it's not a relaxation like prayer, which could be like to certain degree, it could be like a mental simulation to feel good about like a possibility. If you visualize a particular situation, like if you're praying to have something or someone, and while praying you're imagining that reality, and there is a lot of power in visualization for sure, but you're still praying with an intention, even if that intention is selfless, like if you want to if you're praying for someone else, and whatnot. And I think meditation is much better than praying, because praying is just a type of meditation, and meditation itself focuses on like awareness, and paying attention to one particular thing for a prolonged amount of time and whatnot. So if you really want people to be to be more ethical, probably meditation is better approach, because even if it's communal and people sit together in a big hall or of some sort, and meditating together, they still will be diving within their own lives, and especially and hopefully have conversations which they've been dodging throughout their during their regular life, meaning, actually contemplating some of their actions, and only that could change their ethical behavior, not some bullshit story about some uh, probably existing god that will only make people feel that they are self-righteous, and that too hypocritically in certain situation. Maybe if they donate something, they may feel like they are superior to others because they are donating, they are giving up a part of themselves, of whatever BS they can cook up within their mind just to please their selfish god. And that's where I feel that um, these that's where I feel that religion is a bullshit to begin with, and all the traditions which are woven within religion. Some of them are logical and have like a reason behind that, maybe to kind of like um, make the entire population behave in a certain way. Like for example, if a religion preach for cleanliness, then that sort of becomes the ethics of a society, and it helps the entire society. So in that sense, religion is just a means to kind of induce that particular behavior, but that behavior could also be induced with different laws and various ways to kind of like teach people and whatnot. But that being said, let's go back to the video and see where Jordan Peterson is heading with this whole journey to God thing.
But what you see there is if you view someone with love, then it's incumbent upon you to treat them as if they're valuable. And then the more you treat other people as if they're valuable, the better person you are. That just comes along for the ride in some sense. So none of that seems questionable to me. That seems solid. And so then maybe the more love you view other people with, the higher the moral demand that's placed on you. And then I would say too, well then, that's another reason why it's so important to be truthful and in some sense to be good, because it isn't obvious to me that you can withstand that moral load if you're compromised by too much sin. It's too much. And that's another thing that we're not very good at teaching young people about. We shouldn't do that. It's like there's a sanctimonious authority that goes along with that that's the wrong tone. It's more like, I don't know how you lay it out properly, but you tell people that you love how to avoid the road to hell. And you don't do that because you're shaking your finger at them or because you're a moral authority. You do it because you don't want them to burn. And I think there's too much of the moral authority still in the church and not enough of the love that helps people avoid the fire.
I don't have any problem agreeing with this statement. I mean, it's beautifully carved statement, um, um, and even his conclusion to some extent, where he says that too much power is still with the church, is kind of true. So there's that. So and if you notice that the last statement doesn't even need God to exist, or doesn't exist, or whatever, like all he was emphasizing, if I got that right, was uh, to 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 maybe love everything and everyone, without expecting anything in return. I mean, that's technically is what love's supposed to be. But once you start doing that, and then you kind of like also um, uh, lay out the things which didn't work for you for the other people to kind of like learn from it, or something on that line. I mean, those all sounds valuable, and I think a lot of people still do that. A lot of people who doesn't believe in God does this as well. Let's check out where he's heading now.
My wife has always taken the idea of truth very seriously. Her recent brush with death has deepened her religious sense and impelled her towards a life that's more consciously focused on service to others, her family in particular, but not only her family, people beyond the family. And I also think that's a function to some degree of our stage of life. She's a grandmother now, and her children are grown and able to take care of themselves, and so she can turn her attention to other people, maybe farther afield from the immediate family. I'm watching what she's doing and listening to her and watching her practical application of her faith, and that affects me just as everything she does affects me, because I watch what she does and take it seriously. Her recent actions have indicated she's helped a number of people quite substantially, the group that she's been communicating with, and all of that's very interesting to me. She's showing me, I've taken the idea of God seriously for a very long time, and I've said on multiple occasions that I try to act as though God exists, and that's essentially my definition of belief. When people say, do you believe in God? Belief is a multidimensional word, and one question is, well, what do you mean by believe? And for me, the proof of belief is to be found in action. And I decided that I would act as if God existed a long while back. And of course, I'm imperfect in that, inevitably. Now, she's doing that more explicitly as well. She wasn't doing it quite well to begin with, but she's doing it more explicitly and also more within the confines of traditional religious conceptions. Although she's not attending church, she's associating with a number of people who are formally religious.
Okay.
All of that's informing the way that she conducts herself.
Okay. So, again,
It's
all hats off to all shout out to Tammy for doing whatever she's doing, and look like she found her way through her religious community. So big deal. I mean, people act from service through different means. You don't have to be serviceful only if you're a part of a church, first of all. And secondly, in my experience and opinion, this may not apply to Peterson's, including Tammy Peterson, but church, whenever they try to do any good in the society, especially when they try to do good, like the Western churches, when they tried to do good in Indian society, they were doing so that they can convert more people into Christianity. So it's not trying to do good. All these missionary missions, those were just to kind of propagate their religion. That's it. It's not coming from a place of love to begin with. Again, I don't know what organization Tammy is part of and how is she helping people. And my only point is, like, you don't need God to help people. If you are confined with some figurine of like a super figure on which you have to rely in order to be good to people and act good in the society, then I think you failed in life. Sure, if you find all kind of inspiration from scriptures and so-called God, more power to you. But if you need God to become or be a righteous person, then you failed as a human.
Her do that has also highlighted for me the missing praxis in Western Christianity. If you want to be a Christian, let's say, if you think that's necessary, it's not exactly obvious what you should do. You should go to church, but that's not enough, I don't think. I find it useful to contemplate the highest good on a continual basis. I'm trying to keep myself oriented in that direction. It's a religious orientation, fundamentally. It's an overwhelming orientation. But there's no escaping the questions of the ultimate meaning of life. I'm not an atheist anymore, because I don't look at the world that way anymore. I'm not a materialist anymore. I don't think the world's made out of matter. I think it's made out of what matters. It's made out of meaning. What we orient towards unconsciously, which means what captures our attention, is meaning, and it captures our attention before we know what it is. The brain acts as if the world's made out of information or made out of meaning. Who would have the audacity to claim that they believed in God if they examined the way they lived? Who would dare say that? To believe, you think, to believe in a Christian sense, to actually, this is why Nietzsche said there was only ever one Christian, and that was Christ. To have the audacity to claim that means that you live it out fully. And that's an unbearable task in some sense. To be able to accept the structure of existence, the suffering that goes along with it, and the disappointment and the betrayal, and to nonetheless act properly, right? To aim at the good with all your heart, right? To dispense with the malevolence and your desire for destruction and revenge and all of that, and to face things courageously and to tell the truth, to speak the truth and to act it out. That's what it means to believe. That's what it means. It doesn't mean to state it. It means to act it out. And unless you act it out, you should be very careful about claiming it. And so I've never been comfortable saying anything other than I try to act as if God exists, because God only knows what you'd be if you truly believed. I mean, if you think about it in some sense, that's the central idea in Christianity, is that if you were capable of believing, it would be a transfiguring event, a truly transfiguring event. And I know people experience that to one degree or another, but we have no idea what the limit of that is. And we have no idea what the possibility is within each person if they lived a life that was maximally courageous and maximally truthful. You know, because maybe you're running at 60% or 70% or 20% and at cross purposes to yourself. God only knows what you'd be if you believed. And so, while I try to act like I believe, but I'd never claim that I manage it.
Yeah, well, again, this is problematic in the sense I first of all, I resonate with what he's saying there. I mean, the true way of believing into anything is not just believing in the sense like just accepting and truly think that whatever the scripture says is true, but also acting in that way, like living through it, not just kind of like reading it and like brushing it off, like, okay, this is how people used to live back in the day, but I still believe in the same God and will act differently. And that's where it's not a true belief in that case, right? So you truly have to act in that way. So if Christianity, Islam, or any religion for that matter, if they truly act based on their scriptures, well, they will, I think more people will stop believing in that bullshit to begin with. But that being said, that being aside, the problem with Jordan Peterson's statement that he act as if God exists is that he's acting in a particular way just to please the God he thinks exists or he thinks is more probable, right? Because all the gods in the world or in different civilizations are filled with conflicts, especially if you look at any versions of Abrahamic God, like the God, like it's so like in the Old Testament, the personality of God is different than in the New Testament than in Islam, and these all three are supposedly the same God, and you can see the the behavior of this God surprisingly very close to their prophets. I wonder why, uh, but but when Jordan Peterson says that he acts as if God exists, which God is he implying? Is he implying a Buddhist version of God or a Hindu version of God or like one of these Abrahamic versions of God? I'm sure he's talking about Christianity. So again, that kind of changes his entire um, philosophy, right? So he acts in a way to please his version of God, which is based on Christianity, and that version of God is an asshole to other religions. So if he acts as an asshole to other religion, for instance, then it's okay by his God, so he'd be okay with it, right? And you can see this come across like over and over of within his philosophy, within his takes on different systems and different situations. So I'm not surprised. If you truly want to act as if God exists, then okay, then you first define what that God even means for you. What are those principles on which you're acting, and you account for like gods from all around the civilizations all around the globe. You shouldn't be just biased only for your God per se. And to a certain degree, Jordan Peterson have done that. Like I've read his or probably listened to his audiobook, the first one that is 12 Rules of Life, and in a lot of ways that kind of give you a hint of like, okay, these are his philosophies and behaviors, and you don't need God to kind of like buy or assign to those philosophies. So again, Jordan, you already know so many principles and philosophies to live your life by. You don't need a God to get that sense of whatever safety or whatever that makes you feel. I mean, if you believe in God, it's okay. If you don't believe in God, that's okay too. But don't say that you act as if the God exists without defining what that God even means. And if you do act in that way, what are you expecting in return? Because if you're expecting something in return, then it's not a belief. It's a transaction, just like every religion does. So I guess you'll fit right in. All right, let's check out the. Well, we are halfway there, so let's check out the other half.
Okay, so you can think about Christ from a psychological perspective, and my critic, this particular critic that I've been reading, said, well, that doesn't differentiate Christ much from a whole sequence of dying and resurrecting mythological gods. And of course, people have made that claim in comparative religion. Joseph Campbell did that, and Jung to a lesser degree, I would say, but Campbell did that. But the difference, and C.S. Lewis pointed this out as well, the difference between...
Just realized that the video stopped playing. I hate this software. I don't know why it's doing this. This is insane. So now I don't know how far back were we when we lost that. Anyways, I think it should be fine. Let's move on.
Those mythological gods and Christ was that there's a representation of, there's a historical representation of his existence as well. Now you can debate whether or not that's genuine. You can debate about whether or not he actually lived and whether there's credible objective evidence for that, but it doesn't matter in some sense because it does, but there's a sense in which it doesn't matter because there's still a historical story. And so what you have in the figure of Christ is an actual person who actually lived, plus a myth. And in some sense, Christ is the union of those two things. The problem is I probably believe that, but I don't know. I'm amazed at my own belief and I don't understand it. Like, because I've seen sometimes the objective world and the narrative world touch. You know, that's Jungian synchronicity. And I've seen that many times in my own life. And so in some sense, I believe it's undeniable. You know, we have a narrative sense of the world. For me, that's been the world of morality. That's the world that tells us how to act. It's real. Like, we treat it like it's real. It's not the objective world. But the narrative and the objective world touch. And the ultimate example of that, in principle, is supposed to be Christ. But I don't know what to... that seems to me oddly plausible. But I still don't know what to make of it. It's too... partly because it's too terrifying a reality to fully believe. I don't even know what would happen to you if you fully believed it.
But are you a prophet?
Well, there you go. Like, at least he seemed genuinely confused. And sure, I get it. Like, everyone have biases towards the religion or the culture they grew up around, and I guess that's where confirmation bias come into play, right? To begin with, uh, but looking at the last statement, he seemed kind of like pretty confused and like, and it also kind of makes sense why he would be, because who knows if there was a figure called Christ, or you name it, any god, Thor or Buddha or Krishna or Muhammad or anyone for that matter, right? Like, this is all the only thing we have is their like stories behind them. That's it. That's the only way to kind of connect to that particular um, personality of some sort, um, and regardless of if those stories are real or not, like, what message do they give is more important. And I'm sure there are like a lot of beautiful stories around Christ, and some of the other, I bet, like, believers in the religious book. Yeah, shocking, right? Because why wouldn't a religious book comprise of stories of believers who gained a lot in their life and after life, um, in their you know, just because they were believing God, because that's what they're selling. So obviously religious book gonna have that, and a lot of it is exaggerated, like laced with like different life lessons, and people are always gravitated towards like the life lessons because we find those lessons as true, live because of our lived experiences, because of our shared reality. We know that a part of those lessons are true, so we find that uh, that the story must be plausible, and we buy into that bullshit, and then we start, buying into more of that bullshit with like different traditions, and before you know it, you're part of a cult. And and I think it's not my place to tell people to what to believe and not to believe in. I think that's the choice people or anyone in general have to make for themselves. But I feel that self awareness and meditation is the proper channel, a proper means to find that for ourselves, and that's exactly what religious people will prevent you from doing. All right. So, is Jordan Peterson a prophet? Let's see what he thinks.
See, to say yes or no, I have to think about how I might be conceptualized, how what I'm doing might be conceptualized. No, I think I see myself as a psychologist, and fundamentally, I am a psychologist. I'm a behavioral psychologist, and I got very interested in psychoanalytic thinking, especially the Jungian variants, and I'm a professor, and I'm doing that, on a much larger stage, let's say. But that's really what I'm doing. And so it's a combination of those two things. And I speak about religious matters, but I don't see myself as a religious leader. I don't want to make that. God lift from me the intolerable burden of my ignorance, arrogance, willful blindness, bitterness, and resentment.
Oh, wait a second. So
those two things. And
clean-shaven Jordan Peterson is believes that God probably exists. Let's see what the bearded Peterson says.
From me the intolerable burden of my ignorance, arrogance, willful blindness, bitterness, and resentment. As I pray that others rise above the same faults and temptations. I watched Fox News release a message this week. There are terrible things afoot under the surface of our society, and the perpetrators are coming for you and coming for us. And then I watched the Democrats respond in panic and anger, saying, there are terrible things afoot under the surface of our society, and the perpetrators are coming for you, coming for us. Are there terrible things afoot, bubbling under the surface? Is something coming for you and for us? Ask yourself how true that is of yourself and your own life. Have you addressed all that? Are you concerning yourself with the dust in your enemy's eyes instead of attending to the filth that obscures your own sight? Do we want accusation, suspicion, discord, derision, and hatred? Or the peace and prosperity and happiness that beckons to us at this moment like never before? Who's the enemy here? Is it the basket of deplorables? Is it the freaks and the queers?
Research shows nostalgia can help you remember ads.
What the hell? What a worse way to get into an ad. That's why, well, I hate ads. Who doesn't? But also, I think it's a useful necessity, right? Like, that's how channels make money. So, hey, we're supporting. All right, let's continue.
Is it the plumbers and carpenters and tradesmen and managers who work honestly and diligently during the day, and the soldiers who stalwartly defend the borders and protect us? Is it the artists and visionaries whose expressions of unbridled creativity entertain and rejuvenate us, and who continually offer to us an unending panoply of technological miracle? Is it the institutions that guide and protect us, that so many lived and died to erect and establish, which for all their faults have served us so well? Do we want revenge or justice? Do we want contempt or mercy? Do we want war or peace? And what are you aiming at in your heart of hearts? I see even the best of men degenerating into the exchange of blows.
I see even the best of men identifying the enemy in our neighbors and friends. I see even the best of men falling prey to cowardice and self-righteous anger. It needs to stop. I need to stop. You need to stop before it's too late. Who is the enemy here? The snake in your heart? The lies on your tongue? The arrogance of your intellect? The cowardice of our refusal to see? The enemy is that which divides to sow discord. The enemy is the pride and the fear that stops us from lending a hand across the divide. The enemy is the great and eternal adversary of mankind. And if we demonize our brothers, our comrades in arms, do we not precisely call that dread spirit forth? Have we not yet learned? Courage, trust, truth, love, even unto your enemy, which is yourself. God, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. May what is highest guide our vision. May what is highest open our ears. May what is highest guide our tongues. And may we pray, fearful of the hell we could so easily and carelessly create. Deliver us from evil. Shine a light into the corners of our dark hearts. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Well, that's a total 180, and I'm not surprised. At the same time, first of all, the last message was kind of powerful, and I hope that Jordan Peterson listened to that message and follow it, I guess. And again, a lot of the things he says, you don't need God for that. And I mean, I don't have any problem if people believe in whatever BS they want to believe in. Just don't don't force that on the rest of the society, especially when it comes down to Christians in America, America's more than like most of the other countries, right? Like American Christians, and I should say a subset of them, like not all of them, but the small crazy subset. They want to make this country, what do you call 'em? Like follow like biblical laws and shit, and it's same bullshit what the extremists, the Islamic extremists want to do with the Sharia law in their respective countries. So yeah, there's a portion of that group which is too far crazy. But then there are other people and who just mind their own business when it comes down to religion, and I'm all for like, hey, do whatever you want to do or feel like doing, because life is hard. It's a it's a mystery. We have no idea where we came from or where or what's gonna happen when we die. So the state of our consciousness before birth and after death is a mystery. Sure, there are plenty of religions who talks about their version of truth, and I'm sure they buy into it. That's why they willfully go to extreme to preserve their religion and even hurt others, and that's what religion will make people do. But the other part of that is, even if there weren't religion extremists who would, I don't know, hurt other people for their religious belief. There still would be people who would hurt other people for different reasons, and that is still the being hurtful and violent is part of the reality, and we do have different degrees to that, uh, but um, but we can balance it out, if that makes sense. Um, and you could choose to apply particular set of particular set of your reality in a different context, right? Like, um, being violent is not ideal, but um, if you're say fighting, like defending yourself, for instance, like in a real way, but also like if you're fighting and doing martial arts in a more controlled manner, then you can use and channel that the source of that violence to get better at it. Again, like violence does not necessarily mean well, I think violence does mean like hurting others, and also there are like different kind of violence, right? Like there is a physical violence and there's like emotional violence or things of that nature. And well, and when someone practice nonviolence, it's all about practicing nonviolence in all areas of life, to begin with, and that's more difficult. Like restraining oneself from practicing into physical nonviolence is easier than practicing emotional nonviolence, or even like using your words in a way that it doesn't hurt others, at least willfully. All right, what else do I want to check out? There's there is no oh wow, we reached the bottom of the YouTube. I was just about to say that there is no bottom to the YouTube, but there you go. Cool. Recently uploaded. Let's check out some of the recent uploads. Brits try real southern fried chicken for the first time. Much needed upgrade to keep the trespassers and predators away. Well, how is this recently uploaded if it was uploaded like 3 days back?
With the Kroger Plus card.
What? Billy Graham, are you ready to die? Evangelist. The truth about the gender equality paradox. Let's check out Lex Friedman, and let's check out some of his recent guests. I do want to watch this one, but this is like 2 hour long. Oh, what in the world is this? Okay.
Millions find a low-cost health plan at healthcare.gov. So
Yeah, look at the type of ads they post, though. Healthcare.gov, obviously, this is from government, but HBO. Yeah, both like this gotta be like a good show. It has a Game of Thrones characters in it. All right.
Let me ask your opinion since you mentioned him. Andrew Tate, you're both women, successful women. You're both creators. So Andrew Tate is an example of somebody that has become exceptionally successful at galvanizing public attention, but he's also, from many perspectives, a misogynist. So let me ask a personal question. Do you think I should talk to him on this podcast? How would you feel as a fan? Somebody, I'm talking to the great Alex and Andrea Botez, and the next episode is with Andrew Tate.
I think it's a double-edged sword, and most of these things are not as black and white as they seem. Because on one hand, I don't agree with his beliefs, and I think he said a lot of things that are very hurtful and that influence people's opinions. At the same time, talking to someone through that and trying to get to the root of it and how much of it he used just as a social media tactic to maybe change the opinion of people who have been so influenced by him towards something that is maybe more understanding towards women or things like that could do some good. But at the same time, platforming someone like that and giving them more attention also signals to other people who have a platform that it's okay. So it's kind of weighing the pluses and the minuses. It's a very tough decision because it's not clear.
And the thing about the internet, when you make the wrong decision, you're going to pay for it.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, personally, and it is funny. Like, I think the whole way he rose to fame is just a growth hack, and I've seen other people do it where, like, you just say kind of, honestly, I don't really listen to his content because I just find it so dumb, but I think he knows that by saying the dumbest, most controversial things, that's like a quick rise to fame. And I think surface level, like, he can really hold it up, but that's why I would honestly enjoy tuning into a conversation where you're really breaking down to the core of those beliefs. And I think, like, the young kids who look up to him, and when you actually hear someone challenging it, could actually be helpful for people. But at the same time, it's a lot of bad publicity. People see your podcast and see, wow, like, if they don't know you and they don't know why you're interviewing him and they don't listen, they'll see that and then 100% think it's for the other reason.
But I'm also afraid of a society where you can't have discourse with people you don't with people you disagree with. And even though I don't like Andrew Tate, I think the fact that he got banned from all the platforms is kind of scary because it sets a precedent, and you always have to ask yourself, would this be ethical if I was on the other side? And even things with a president like Trump, even if, let's say, you're somebody who was on the left, if that would have happened to a leftist president, how would you feel? Would you think that's morally ethical? So that is something that I think is important. We try to find ways to have conversations and reach some mutual understanding and try, instead of just amplifying the worst about every human being.
Well, so one of the major reasons I'm struggling with is because I really enjoy talking to brilliant women. I think it's also, a lot of women reached out to me saying, like, it is what it is, but they're inspired when a female guest is on.
Yeah.
And to me, if I talk to somebody like Andrew Tate, even if I have a really hard-hitting, I think it could be a very good conversation that lessens the likelihood that a brilliant, powerful female will go on the show, because they'll never watch it. But the thing we do in the society is we put labels on each other. Well, Lex is the person that platforms misogynist.
Yep.
I did a thing where Joe Rogan got in trouble over an N-word controversy earlier in the year, and Joe's a good friend of mine. I said that I stand with Joe, that he's not a racist or something like that. And within certain communities, I'm now somebody who's an apologist for racists, right? Or a racist myself, that kind of thing. We put labels without ever listening to the content, without ever sort of, actually, just even the very simple step, or it seems to be difficult, of like taking on the best possible interpretation of what a person said and giving them the benefit of the doubt and having empathy for another person. So you have to play in this field where people assign labels to each other, and it's difficult. But ultimately, I hope that good conversations is a way to, like, a greater understanding for people to grow together as a society and improve and learn lessons and the mistakes of the past. But you also have to play this game where people just like putting labels on each other and canceling each other over those. Or that guy said one thing nice about Donald Trump, he must be a far right Nazi, or the opposite. That this person said something nice about the vaccine, he must be a far left, whatever, apologist for whatever, for Fauci. Where most of us, I think, are ultimately in the middle. It's a weird thing, but I think, and it's also painful on a personal level. Like people have written to me about things like single words, half sentences that I've said about either Putin or Zelensky, where they have hate towards me because of what I said. Either both directions. I've now accumulated very passionate people that some call me a Putin apologist, some call me a Zelensky apologist, and it hurts to, given how much I have family there, how much I've seen the suffering there, and to carry that burden over time, not let it destroy you is tough. So, like, do you want to take on another thing like that when you have conversations?
Right.
Or can I just talk to awesome people like you do? Where it's not that
We're not controversial.
or you're interesting, you're fascinating, you're inspiring, you're like fun, not all those difficult things that come with more difficult conversations.
Right, but somebody has to be making those difficult decisions and challenging the notions that we should cancel someone just for slightly disagreeing with us. And it's very hard to take that on personally. And I think that's a huge part of it when you know it's something you're doing for the right reasons and you're getting a lot of people coming and misinterpreting it. It's very painful. But I think you have to ask yourself long term if when you made that decision, you ultimately thought it would be better or worse for your listeners to know that conversation. And then if you can sleep with it at night, take the risk.
Yeah, when I talk to people that,
I mean, we're closer to towards the end of the video, but I hope I don't get a strike, like a copyright strike, but because all of all of the credit goes to Lex and his guest. So that being said, let's finish this rest of the video before I can maybe like pitch in and give my 2 cents.
especially like astrophysicists, and you realize how tiny we are,
Right?
how incredible, like how huge the universe is. Like it doesn't matter. You can do anything. You could like, you can walk around naked, talk shit to people, do whatever the hell. And actually, in modern social media, people will just like forget. It's like it's ultimately liberating. Just try to do, at least from my perspective, the best possible thing for the world you can. Take big risks, and it doesn't matter.
And that's the other thing with being canceled nowadays, because everyone's attention is much more short-sighted. You can get canceled and then it'll blow over in 3 days. And you actually see things like this on Twitch very often, where people just have outbursts of outrage and they come into your chat and they're all spamming and saying mean things, and then 3 days after. And of course, they're not actually ever serious things. They're usually like things clipped of any streamers and like their worst moments, but then people forget about it pretty soon after.
So you're able to accept that? Like when somebody's being shady to you for a day?
Yeah, I mean, I still get sometimes emotional about it, especially when I'm like, oh wow, like these things are being said are not true, or like this is clearly taken out of context, but I've just accepted that it's part of the job. And if I am trying my best and I am trying things with as good intentions as possible, then I just try to learn every time that happens and be like, okay, what could I do better? And what is just part of the job?
Yeah, that's a tricky question to begin with. I mean, I sympathize with the Lex because he has what do you call, a bug to converse with people, and at the same time, if you do have a conversation with people which you shouldn't have, in the sense like who doesn't deserve your attention to some degree, then you could get into trouble, not just from in a personal way, but also like in a society way. But even if you do like the person and want to, hang out with them, you might still get in trouble if the society see that people or that person as a controversial figure. But here's an alternate option. Why not have a conversation with them and just not release them freely on your platform? Maybe like put it behind the paywall, and then give away that money to do something which benefits their victims, I guess. Like Andrew Tate, given he's like an asshole and whatnot, whatever revenue is generated with his conversation, because of like having a conversation with him, you just give it away to maybe like people anti-bully campaign or something. So how about that? That's an option. But at the same time, internet is wild. If someone bought that access to that video or podcast or whatever conversation, they might take like a clip of it and post it and upload it online. So you still would have to be careful about that. So it's a tricky question to begin with, and there is no simple answer. I do feel that having conversations with people, especially who disagree with you to the core, could be helpful and soothing, at least to understand where they are coming from, or where you're coming from, to be honest. And um, and I've had so many conversations with different kind of people, from all areas of life and uh, all I would say like spectrum of age and whatnot. And all of those conversations made me realize one thing, that we can't change people. If I want to change someone else's perception of reality, I'm putting myself up for a failure, because that's not possible. People would have to come to the conclusion they want to, or in their own way at least. And there is no there is no other way. There is and I mean, sure, everyone has an influence over others. Like, I have some degree of influence over people and society, and that is true for you as well. But our degree of influence is very small, to be honest, at the moment at least. I know my degree of influence is going to go up. I'm kidding, who knows? But the more influence an individual have, the greater responsibility to carry. I mean, that's the burden they have to carry, with the influence, I guess. And that's where it goes back to our conversation, that that the individual have to take a look into their own personal life and understand and figure out like where they fit in the sense, not fit in a society per se, but in the spectrum of morality per se. And again, the morality by their own definition, not like buying into any cultural or religious or legal definition of what morality is, like, because everyone have a compass, an internal compass to gauge our personal morality. And sure, at times, that compass is broken, um, or influenced, or corrupted or whatever. But we do have um, we do have power to kind of modify that or repair it per se. But I know that a lot of the things I'm saying is it's easier to say than actually follow. And I know that a lot of people are trapped in their own societal matrix. And maybe to some degree, I'm lucky enough to be able to look at the world from a different lens, instead of the one I had it by default. And that absolutely helps, at least to understand the state of reality, or also to kind of see how others are looking at the reality. And sure, I have my own confirmation biases in general, and so does everyone else. So it's easier to some degree for me to spot the confirmation bias in others. And to a certain degree, I'm aware of the confirmation bias within me as well. But regardless, the point being that in the digital age we are living in, it's very difficult to kind of have a conversation with people and uh, not get into not get in a heat for that. I mean, especially if you want to have a conversation with a controversial figure. But it also kind of depends on how you kind of label it, right? So you can, like, especially with Lex, the amount of content he have and the amount of and the quality of people he brings on his podcast. I'm sure he can create like different categories or subcategories of playlists, like, where first of all, the controversial playlist where he knows that the figure he gonna have is filled with controversy, so people can view that episode with that lens. And on top of that, he can put some of the content behind the paywall. So if and whatever revenue he's gonna generate out of that, he can give it away to the to the opposite of what that controversial figure believes in. So for instance, whatever revenue he generated from having Kanye on his interview, just give that, maybe, like, give it to like a organizations which like, especially which helps Jewish people, for instance, because Kanye is like anti-Semitic, but also, like, in general, like, people who helps people to kind of like build. And if he end up having Andrew Tate on the podcast, then all the money coming from there, give it away to anti-bullying, because nothing would be like punch in Andrew Tate's face than telling him, like, with an action that, hey, you are such a bully that to compensate you having on our platform, we're gonna give this away to an anti-bullying organization, or whatever. I mean, that's how at least I would do it if and when I get to that place. But it's a bit far for now. So until we reach there, stay peaceful.